Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Back2Basics. I am Moe ElHussini, and I am here with my dear friend George Elias. Welcome, George, to the podcast. As always, how you doing, buddy? How are you?
Doing great, Mo. I really enjoy doing these podcasts with you. And let me just start out by
Same
saying something that
here.
let me say something I just noticed. Our last four
What
podcasts have been when it's raining outside, so I think there's a pattern.
is it raining? Because I'm in my office. I haven't even looked outside. My curtains are drawn. Is it raining? I've been here for like five
Yes,
hours.
it's
Is it
it's
really?
raining for
Wow,
me.
that's spooky. It's almost Halloween too. So no, that's interesting. I didn't even notice. Who knows? Maybe next time it'll be snowing the way the weather is going.
Crazy weather.
I know, I know. Tell me, what do you want to talk about today? What's on your mind?
Mo, I've been really thinking about body language recently, and I thought that would be an interesting topic for us. Have you ever noticed that when somebody walks into a room, or when you're first introduced to somebody that you haven't met before, you can immediately figure out if that's somebody that you like or dislike, or you feel like they're a good person to do business. Have you ever had that sort of sometimes you call it like intuition, or just an instant feeling about somebody? Does that happen to you?
Interesting. You know what? Yeah, yeah, no, it has. It has happened. I think, let me put it to you this way, George. Yes, it happens. I think as I have progressed through my career, I've been able to maybe harness it or control it or not let it impact my decision more. But absolutely, I think it's there. Yes, I think it happens. Why do you feel it too? Does it happen to you?
I've actually noticed it quite a bit, uh, and
Yeah.
and I agree that I've noticed it more as I've gotten along in my career, and I try not to pass a final judgment. I try to slow
Hmm.
down with that sort of what do we call it, intuition, and try to figure out more about the person than just the way they look or they present themselves.
Yeah.
But I
Hmm.
think in the business world, uh, especially when you're thinking about working with customers, not all customers are like that. And it's sort of a scary thing to think that your customers or the people that you want to do business with you are going to judge you so quickly, perhaps even before you start to speak or present.
And it makes me think of two things that even it's more critical when it happens in an interviewing process, right? And I think we talked about it briefly many episodes ago when it creates this kind of like anchoring effect where I shake your hands and the second I see you and I meet you, I've developed this kind of like label that I'm gonna label you with, and then everything that happens afterwards is kind of like just a confirmation to how I feel, no matter how good you actually turn out to be or how polite or how diplomatic. That's it. I've came up with this conclusion in my mind that no matter what you do, it just anchors it more and more in my mind. Do you know what I mean?
It's funny that you bring in confirmation bias, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of truth to that. That once you've
Yeah.
formed your opinion, and I think it's interesting that you brought it to even a handshake, which is, I think, a further evolution of body language, which
Hmm.
includes hopefully positive touch, right? You have a
Hmm.
nice warm, firm handshake. Hopefully, you're looking the person in the eye, smiling. You're dressed for the interview. You look presentable. You're smiling. You have a pleasant smile on. All
Yeah.
those sorts of actions can help somebody form a positive uh, view of you. Then from then on, things that you say, if you help them uh, with their confirmation bias, in a sense, you're on a
Hmm.
really good track for that interview, aren't you?
I get your point 100%. And you know what? Not to open this up to a whole other discussion that could take hours and hours and hours. But back to the handshake. What if you don't even want to shake someone's hand? What if your culture, your religion, your background, your upbringing, you're in a country where opposite genders do not shake hands? And my point is, without even answering it, is that we should really kind of look at the combination of the cues altogether, right? Like it's a combination of things, the culture, the background of the individual. Sometimes what we see has a much, much deeper meaning or unseen, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for now, but has like an underlying, many factors that could factor into how that person is interacting with you. So I think, yes, what we see, the handshaking, the hugging, the smiling, the eye contact, that's what we see. But there could be many triggers behind the scenes that lead to what it is that we see from the individual. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's almost difficult to talk about body language and these sort of triggers without bringing in gender and bias, feelings about that, or differences in genders and the way that people tend to interact, or differences in cultures and bias and the way people think about it. I mean, I think back to the first time I went to shake someone's hand in a business type setting, and she didn't raise her hand to shake back, and I remember the feeling of on my part, a feeling of awkwardness at first, until she looked right at me and said, "I'm sorry, I don't shake hands for religious reasons," and that actually turned it around. Her demeanor and the way she said it, for me, diffused the situation with the explanation where I no longer felt awkward that it was about me for some reason, and it was just, it is what it is. And for me, it was an educational piece and understanding her point of view and where she was. And for me, it was like, oh, I just learned something about her. She was able to diffuse and help the situation in a very calm, nice manner. She was still looking pleasant, not disgusted or something like that. And that really actually helped in forming me having a very positive viewpoint of her, and we ended up actually working together in a very positive sense. So I don't think that all because somebody doesn't shake hands or doesn't do something for cultural reasons, that necessarily excludes them from doing business very, very effectively.
Yes, and I think I agree 100%. And I think one of the takeaways from our podcast today, or whenever we end this discussion after one or many podcasts, one of the takeaways that I'll bring up from now is we shouldn't be quick to judge. We shouldn't be quick to label somebody as nice guy, bad guy, hostile guy, right? We should give the benefit of the doubt to all those things that we've mentioned in the last couple of minutes, kind of like what you went through. I went through it. And you know what? You were fortunate that you were with somebody that's outgoing and confident enough to explain the reason. What if she was an introvert, or what if it was like such a quick situation where she didn't get a chance to explain? That would have been it. You know what? You would have labeled her as an unfriendly, whatever that it is that came through your mind. I will not speak for you, but whatever thoughts that would have come through your mind, there's your anchor, right? That would have been it. So if you don't have anything else to comment, I'm going to give it back to you, but why don't you either comment on what I said, or let's start with one. Let's look at another attribute, eye contact. You want to start with that? Let's take it from the handshake. Let's work our way into another one. What do you think about eye contact?
Yeah, so let me just comment on the handshake and the cultural aspect. I think unfortunately, and I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but unfortunately, if she wasn't so outgoing and maybe left it as awkward, unfortunately, I may not have had such a positive viewpoint of her. and
Yeah.
and maybe there's a lesson in there. And I hate to put the burden on somebody that has some that is in a culture where there's handshakes or something. I hate to put the burden on them, but maybe if they know that they're in a culture that where there's things they can't respond in the same way that's I guess how should I say almost like tradition or something where people traditionally shake hands in business. They should somehow rehearse or have something to say like, oh, I don't shake hands for religious reasons. And most people are going to be perfectly fine with that, just like she did with me. And I think that it's a growth experience for everybody. But maybe somebody should have something to say about it, right? Hey, I can't shake hands, and just knows that it's okay to say that. And quite frankly, if the person's not okay with that, that's somebody you don't want to do business with anyway. That's
no,
what
I
probably
agree.
say.
If someone's not tolerant enough, or adaptable enough to other points of view, I agree. So, anything else around this point?
No, but let's eyes. I don't want to bring eyes, but eyes are tremendously important, and they're important for business. They're actually very important if you're interested in dating or courting somebody. The way you look, whether you look at them in their eyes or not, this is we're all human beings, but there's an emotional chemical reaction inside people when they're looked at it in a pleasant way. Now, let's all be careful with the eyes, because you can look at let's say somebody that you're affectionate about or want to date in some way, and you're looking at them, those eyes and how it's taken could be taken very affectionately and draw that person in. But if the person doesn't have good feelings about you, it can also be kind of creepy. So I think that there's a proper use of eyes. Don't overdo it if you're not getting the right reaction. Don't think that you can have the staring contest and think you're going to win it, because that's not what it is. But when somebody is talking to you and they make good positive eye contact, it feels good. They're paying attention to you. They're interested in you. This is one of the reasons why I've encouraged people to not do phone or Zoom interviews when being in person is an option. If you're going to do if you're going to do Zoom for business, do things that as much as possible to look in the camera, have your camera on, look in the camera, try to look at the person when they're talking, because when you look distracted, and it's harder over Zoom, when you look distracted, you're looking away, people don't make the same connection. And ultimately that really does affect your business and your ability to move on to further stages in the interview process.
So let me pose it to you as a question. Sustained eye contact. You're talking to somebody and they have sustained eye contact with you. What does that signify to you? In your point of view, what would that tell? What is it to you?
To me, it means that they're interested in me. They're engaged. They're listening. They find me pleasant in some way. It makes a huge difference. Let me just explain something that I've observed. And Mo, you tell me if you've observed this, right? So let's say there's a child, a small child, I will call him little Jimmy, maybe 3 or 4 years old, right? Walks into the room with a bunch of adults, okay?
Yes.
One of the young ladies notices this child walking through the room with adults. What does she do? This is a typical thing that a young woman would do. She will get down on that child's level, look him in the eyes, right? Look him in the eyes, and with a very pleasant voice, "Oh, Jimmy, look at what you're doing. Oh, you're here." And she's gonna be making direct eye contact right into Jimmy's eyes. And and she's going to be, carrying him with a hug and bring him back to the room for him to play, right? Or whatever's next.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I hate to say it, but we all have that little kid in us still, even as adults. We all have that little kid in us, and we all want people to get onto our level, to make eye contact, to talk pleasantly, embrace us, even if it's not physical, but embrace us in the conversation or in the presence, and that makes us feel good, right? And I'm just bringing that up because that's how we grew up, as children being treated, and that's the way we even want to be treated as adults. And in the business world, there's appropriateness around that. There's an appropriate way of being greeted, of being looked at, of being talked to. And when you're talked in that appropriately loving way, you can't help but respond. Little Jimmy felt good in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And little Moe wants to feel good inside when coming and doing business, and so does little George here.
No, I agree with you. Yes, and I think I know I can think of some people that I have known that on a social and professional level, know how to give that. It's a mix of affection, interest, respect, attention. When they talk to somebody, you can see the sincerity in their eye. It reflects that affection, the interest. They make you feel you're important. They make you feel valued. I think it's a talent that some people are born with, or that they acquire, or it's part of their personality, that they do bring out, or they do seek that little Jimmy and then the person they're talking to, and they know how to feed it. They know how to make a connection through it, right? They know how to connect with that person through that approach that you're talking about. I agree. I think if we all have that in us, and some people know how to bring it out and know how to deal and communicate with it, connect with it on many different levels, depending on the nature of the interaction. Now, no, go ahead. What were you going to say?
You said something, and I'll just point out that I sort of disagree a little bit. Well, only that you said that it's like they're born with it, and I do think some people are naturally outgoing and have the ability to do it. But I also believe that this level of interaction is trainable, and I believe that for somebody who's, let's say, is just not good at making eye contact, I think with working with them and teaching them how to use their eyes and to practice, talk to themselves in the mirror, look at themselves in the mirror when you're talking. Hey, if you're having problems talking to somebody, look in the eye, look at their forehead, look between their eyes, start getting that. I think it's trainable. I think telling somebody to use their eyes like their sticky eyes. So when you look at somebody, look at them like they're a little sticky. And when you have to look away almost like you're reluctant to look away, but you have to, right? People pick, when they're told and you're trained, you can actually break down the way you use your eyes. Even if you're not good, I think it's trainable. So the reason why I bring this up is for the listeners. I don't want them to feel like if they're just not good at it, there's nothing they can do. I think there's a lot that you can do. And the more you train, the more you work at it, the better you get at it.
I get your point, and it's a valid point. The reason I said it the way I said it is because I believe myself, anybody around me, or like us in general, our tendencies that we talked about, I think, in one of our first episodes, or what makes us, is part hereditary, part through our experience after we cross maybe like the 8-10-year-old age, and part of it is through our role models, like how we see people behave and act. But I do believe that everything you said is correct, but I do believe it's kind of like what I think about when you say what you just said. Absolutely. Everybody should try to train and improve and explore and discover new things in them. But I believe that to some extent, it's kind of like telling an introvert, let me take and teach you to be good at public speaking. There's some things, yes, where we can learn and train and practice, some we cannot. But your point is valid that there are in betweens. Even if I know that I'm really, really uncomfortable dealing with people, I'm really bad at even shaking hands or connecting, making eye contact, I should, like you said, train, try to practice, and try to apply it to some extent. Right? So I agree that yes, no matter what, we should give it a try and try to learn to do
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel as though I agree with you, with the, there's a nature aspect of it, and,
it.
people having them, whether they're introvert or extroverts. But I think even with that, there's ways of becoming better and trainable, right? I think
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm at. And I know that I was fortunate with for instance, my father, who was a businessman. So he brought me around at a very young age where he was doing business. So I got to see him and emulate him and, learn about that. And I can also tell you that I used to be part of a group in high school that actually competed doing things like interviews. And I was coached in my teens on, posture and eye contact and what to do with your hands and smiling and things like this. And all these things make a huge difference. Some people do it naturally. Other people have to be told. And just one last thing that I'll say about it, because you're talking about posture and things. I know that the military takes in, and I know we've talked about military a lot. They take in people that are 17, 18 years old, and they teach them how to stand up straight, how to look, how to look forward, how to articulate and talk. And, you can instantly see somebody that's had that military type training in how to present. Because I see it all the time. I'm like, oh, that person's been in the military because of the way they stand. You're 17, 18 years old. You're still moldable. You're still able to learn these things. And maybe you won't be that natural best at them, but you can learn enough where you can turn it on and make it work for you.
I agree. And I mean, since you did, I remember back, God, when was it? Maybe 10, 11 years ago. I remember I went by your dad's work. I remember he took me out to lunch with him and a bunch of his colleagues. Remember when he was like helping me learn some things in like that new project I was working on with steel and manufacturing and stuff. And I remember he took me out to lunch, remember? And we were sitting about 7 of us, and he was the heart of the discussion. And I see what you're talking about now. He was the one connecting everybody with everybody, starting the conversations, creating that lively atmosphere. And there were other guys sitting there that they needed that nudge and that push, which, back to your point, there are people that are natural at it and some people that are uncomfortable with it. There are some people that don't like it, but no matter what, it is part of our daily lives, and that we should practice it and train on it to some extent as much as we can. Agreed. The rest of the face. All right. Forget the eyes. Facial expressions. What about facial expressions? Expressive facial expressions. What would they indicate?
Oh boy, Mo. So this is something. And this is something I'm terrible at. I'm terrible at this because
no, you're not.
You know me. You know me. My face tells people exactly what I'm thinking. There is no hiding it. So
I know.
If I'm happy, if I'm feeling good about something, you can see it on my face, and if I'm not, you can see it on my face. So I know that, and I think you know that, and people that know me know that.
Yes.
Other people are very good at managing their facial expressions. They're very good. at doing it. And I think it's an asset in business that if you
But George,
can
I'm going to
allow.
interrupt you for a second. Hold on, because you're saying something. I actually, before we move on and we forget, and I hope I didn't mean to interrupt you, sorry, but I consider actually the fact that you're facing, I mean, I remember from the 90s when we would be going out, sitting at Rutgers or going to the movies in the car, and you would have an argument with somebody. I think the fact that you show what you feel is a form of sincerity. It's actually, that the fact that you're upfront and you're honest about how you feel, you believe you have a point in your mind, you're genuine and honest about it, and it's sincere, it's commendable and respectable that you actually express it. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that because actually, I used to always think that that's actually a good thing in you, that you don't sugarcoat things. What you feel, your opinion about something, you say it, you're sincere about it, you're respectable, diplomatic, but you voice your opinion. That's your personality.
Well, thanks for saying that, Mo, and I really appreciate that. I feel those are a lot of compliments, right? I think what I mean by that is, so because my face betrays my feelings so well, it just bubbles out of me, I guess. What likes and dislikes, and whether I agree or disagree, you can see it all over my face. I'd be the worst poker player in the world, right? Everybody would know what hand I have. Right? That's why I don't play poker. But sometimes in business, you need to have a poker face, and that's what I mean.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's what I'm saying. I know I'm not good at it.
I agree.
Right? Like if somebody gives me a great offer, the smile is going to be ear to ear. I'm like, I just got a great offer. Other people, who have a poker face might be able to even negotiate a better deal, right? And say, just because of the way they can manage their facial expressions and, and make the most out of the business for that, right? Or, sometimes being in a very upsetting situation and exuding calm and even having your facial expressions show that you're calm, even when inside you're freaking out a little bit, people that can do that can lead people through a really difficult situation. So I really
do.
Me, I have to make my inside calm. I can't just have my face be calm. I literally have to calm myself down for me to exude calm. I know that about me, and I have to manage my feelings more than my face, where maybe other people can manage their face despite their feelings.
Interesting. That's a really interesting point. And for the sake of time, I know we're almost out. Remember that point that you just mentioned about, controlling the inside to control the outside versus being able to disconnect both. We should talk about that one more because I really think it's an interesting point, and I think our different personalities may approach that in different ways. So why don't are you okay if we start the next episode? We're going to continue our discussion about body language, facial expressions, but let's bring that point up and start from there. What do you say?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I'd like to hear how you feel if there's a cultural aspect to that as well. Because
I'm going to think about it.
Because me personally, I think I've noticed, and again, I'm not inside everybody, so I don't know, but I think I've noticed that there's certain cultures that are much better at having an outside presentation versus what their inside is doing, where some other cultures are there isn't as much of an emphasis on being able to do that. So I'm curious how you feel about that.
I'm gonna brainstorm on it between now and our next episode, and we'll definitely talk more about it, George. Let's do that.
Sounds good to me.
All right, man. Well, so this was really interesting. I mean, like I said, we're gonna take this to the next, continue the discussion next time when we continue talking about this topic.
Yeah, I agree, and really interesting talking today with you about body language. So anyway, so thank you all for listening to this episode of Back to Basics on the Business Edge, brought to you by Feliciano School of Business at Montclair State University. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and welcome any feedback you have for us, including suggestions for future topics.
George, the feeling is mutual, man. I really did enjoy this. We went back down memory lane, brought up some old stories that we've had. But thank you, and thank you all for listening. And we will see you next time on the Back to Basics podcast.
Thanks, Mo. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.